So now I'm just having fun.
We have approximately 2 minutes between every wave.
Today I'll be going over a recap of the Ventura Half Marathon and my new PR. This was my second year doing the Ventura Half Marathon, and happy how the day went. My chip time was 1:37 and 17 seconds, which is nearly a 4-minute PR from last year's race. I do feel I was capable of going sub 1:35, but unfortunately some few circumstances prevented that from happening this day. I'll start with quickly going over the race. Ventura Half Marathon is a race that it's a point-to-point half marathon and marathon that begin in Ojai, California and goes all the way down to Ventura. It is a scenic route that goes from the mountains to the beach, and it does have a downhill which can be beneficial for those chasing a Boston qualifying time. For me, since I'm preparing for the Paris Marathon, I was just only doing the half marathon just to see how quick I can move, as well as going downhill is not going to be as devastating as my legs as a hilly course. I'll start with the rest day weather conditions, and it was freezing. Leading up to the race, many thought that it was going to get canceled. It had been unusually cold and rainy all week long in California, and there was flooding, and they actually had to reroute the course, both the half marathon from a previous storm, and then this time around they had to reroute a little bit of the marathon last minute. So it was down to the wire, and kudos to the organizers, and I greatly appreciate all the hard work they did in terms of checking the course right before, keeping everyone up to date. Then ended up checking the course, sweeping for any debris that might be in the way. And while in some spots there was a little bit of mud, overall I was pretty happy with the race conditions. We were lucky that the day of the race it was not raining and pretty sunny. However, it was extremely cold. Temperatures were hovering around 33, 34 degrees at the start line. And I gotten up extremely early that day and actually got to the start line way ahead of schedule, probably about an hour and a half before. And so I took my time, sat in my car, and I actually drove up in some sweats, and then I changed while there. And that's where my first mistake was. I wanted to wait as close as possible to use the restroom. And last year I tried doing that and ended up not being able to use the restroom right before the start. And luckily that didn't really affect me. I was able to kind of just ignore it throughout the race since it was just a half. But I underestimated once again how long the lines were. About 40 minutes beforehand, I went to want to use the restroom and then try to, my idea thought that was going to be about 15 minutes or so to get in and out of the bathroom and then warm up for about 15 minutes or so. I ended up getting out at about less than 5 minutes to spare before the start. And since I was aiming to do 1:35, I just went straight to the corrals and lined up. I definitely didn't want to run without a pace group this time, because funny enough, historically speaking, I've never ran with a pace group. I would either lose them, or last year I was aiming for 1:45, and when I caught up to them, I decided to just push it, and I actually ended up getting about just shy of 1:41. So I didn't have time to warm up, which is mistake number one. And then again, it was unusually cold. That first mile was pretty tough. In addition, the way that the pace groups were set up was there was people with a 1:30 sign and then 1:45. So my plan was to line up with the people in the 1:30 area, kind of stick around to the back, let people pass through, kind of use that first mile to warm up, and then kind of try to find a group of people that were kind of going for 1:35. And as soon as the race started, I was probably, my first mile ended up coming a little above 8 minutes, and then it was slightly downhill, so I also wanted to take it easy. I let people pass. However, I think that the initial wave was for people going sub 130, not around that 130 area. So I was quickly left behind and kind of just found myself alone, no pace groups, really no one around me. Here we are at the Ventura Half, about 30 degrees, freezing. Lost my pace group already, but I guess it's time to rely on stride, see how accurate it is at proximity race. So I took that as a positive, as it gave me the opportunity to really rely on my stride foot pod. And what this does is it kind of calculates the power that you run and kind of creates predictions as to what power you should be racing. That way you don't go too hard at first, and also you are also not saving too much at the end. So I set up a workout where at the initial you just telling me to slow down, and then towards the second half it was telling me to kind of pick up the pace. So it gave me the opportunity to truly rely on that and test how well the stride worked, which throughout the course of the race worked out wonderfully. At the beginning, since I lost my pace group, I really just wanted to pick up the pace and try to catch up to some people. And the stride foot just kept giving me audio cues to just slow down. So that first 5K was kind of just trying to figure out a pace. Kind of around between mile 1 and mile 2, I started feeling a little bit of side pain, like a side stitch above my rib. And so I just thought, okay, I think I'm pushing myself too hard already, trying to catch up to people. So I backed off a little bit and kind of relied on my stride again. Now the Ventura River path, which is where most of the course is at, is one that I am familiar with. I used to live in Ventura myself and gone up and down the path that the course runs along on bike, and done several runs along it. So I feel like I have a home field advantage there. However, as I mentioned earlier, due to the storm, they did have to reroute part of the course. So the second 5K was a section that it's through streets that I've never really been through. So I also kind of just took that as a chance to kind of just try to find my pace. And since I'm a little bit unfamiliar, I know it was a little bit hilly there in that section. And again, relying on my stride foot pod, I would just kind of push it when it was telling me to push, and then slowing down when it was telling me to slow down. The first 10K of the race, I just had a difficult time trying to find a good groove. As I mentioned, just a different course detour, and it was a little bit choppy and hilly. I was just, I don't know why I couldn't find a groove. And then additionally, just because of the temperature, I was wearing arm sleeves, which I actually don't normally wear. So I've worn them mostly for cycling, not for running. And so, but because it was cold, I wore this time around. And I normally don't like running with anything in my arms. I just like feeling the breeze and feeling cool. So around the 5 mile mark, I took that off. I had some gloves that I also took off around the 5 mile mark, and I think that was also a mistake. I should have just probably kept everything on. It was still, at that point, it must have been 37, 38 degrees, still cold, where I wouldn't have overheated. And so I just spent way too much time and energy really fumbling around, taking off my gloves, putting them in my back pocket. I ended up actually throwing away the sleeves after one of the water aid stations, just because I didn't have anywhere to put them. Additionally, I had like a little headband, and I think I ended up leaving that on. So I think that in preparation for my marathon, just whatever I end up wearing, kind of just deal with it if I have to. Gloves are not going to break. At least I don't think are going to make or break a race. And then Another mistake is I normally like to run with glasses, and so just because it was so cold, I don't know why, I thought it was going to be a little bit overcast, and just the sun was getting, as the sun was rising, it was just kind of in my face and a little bit annoying, but luckily I did have the hat. Overall, I felt pretty good, and as I was approaching the 7 mile mark, or the halfway point, it kind of got back on the Ventura River path, which I'm very familiar with, and I knew the hilly there was no hilly sections really, just kind of smooth downhill from there.
Just about halfway through, I've been having some difficulty putting my pace, but heart rate's hovering about 175, 177, so it's all right. So I've been definitely more conservative in the first half this year than last year, so I can push second half. Also, the route was rerouted due to some flooding, so I'm not familiar with it. Second half is pretty much home turf since I've run the pad multiple times, so hopefully that's some advantage. 6.5 to go, let's go.
So after mile 7, I started picking up the pace, and some of the people that were probably going for 135 started catching up to me from the wave right after me. So I kind of locked into a few people and try to keep up with their pace for the most part. And normally in a race, I do find someone to kind of just lock into and kind of have a little competition that they're probably unaware of and just try to beat them. And I just couldn't this time around. People were kind of faltering a little, I would pass them and then they wouldn't catch up to me, and then several minutes later they would pass me up, and then I would kind of try to catch up to them again, and it was just different people kind of rotating in and out of that position. And so it was just tricky in that regard. The second half, I'm very happy with my splits, and in terms of my effort that I was giving, and according to Stride, I had a pretty consistent increase in effort as the race progressed. So last year, I was running at a higher heart rate, and in some areas significantly faster. I felt I was going a lot faster last year, and however, by mile 10, I was just kind of hitting a little bit of a wall there. And that's kind of been historically what has occurred in my half marathon races. This is the first time that this has not happened. I was pretty consistent with my heart rate, with my effort slowly increasing, and I felt great just about the entire race. As I mentioned, I felt a little bit of pain as I stitched towards mile 1, but that kind of went away. And then, funny enough, it happened again at the 13-mile mark. Like literally in the last 30 seconds, I had a pain where I just tried to, at the very last 0.1 mile, I wanted to do an all-out sprint, and all of a sudden, just this pain kicked in. So you can see that my pace dropped significantly in that section. And I managed to pull it together only because I saw someone with this, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone with a stroller kind of like beating me, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to let someone with a stroller beat me. So I just kind of pulled myself together and dashed the last few meters of the race to complete the race. And as I mentioned, my heart rate was significantly lower this time around than last year's, and I'm pretty happy with how that went. And in terms of using this as a dress rehearsal for my marathon, I know that I can actually rely on my Stride to keep me in check with my paces. Paris is a city with cobblestone. It's going to go under in tunnels and kind of underground a little bit at moments of times, and it's going to have a little bit of hilly, and I am aware that there is a hilly like at the 23-mile mark that does sneak up on people, where people kind of think of that 20-mile wall. In this particular race, you kind of have to be cautious between miles 20 and 23. This is the first time I raced with my GoPro, and this is also a great dress rehearsal because a lot of the footage was unusable. There was a lot of shaking, not properly thinking of my shot. I was mostly focused on the race. So this was a great opportunity for me to learn how to remain calm with my camera when I am shooting something, because if you look at this ending, it is not pretty. Some final thoughts on the race. If you are looking for a fast course, the Ventura Half Marathon is a great one to run. While I have not done the full marathon, if you are looking for that BQ Boston qualifying time, it is highly ranked in that regard for that. So it's a fun course. Ventura is also a great, lovely city. Great food and drink there. So post-race, lots of goodies there and great place to sightsee. It's about an hour 15 from Los Angeles. So if you're local, great little day trip. And if you're not, the Central Coast of California is just picturesque and great place to visit. Some quick recommendations for brunch. I really recommend Immigrant Son, which is on Main Street, as well as Cajun Kitchen. And if you are looking for some beignets or some gumbo, really great in the morning. And for coffee, Prospect and Singing Sun are two of my favorite coffee shops in the area. So definitely check those places out if you are in Ventura. Well, anyways, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for new videos. I'm a little bit behind on this one, but there's another one coming right around the corner. Thank you, and please like and subscribe.